This is Major Label Debut. This is the podcast about major label debuts and other events taking place around the intersection of art and commerce. My name is Graham Wright. Have you heard about this artificial intelligence? Have you heard about this AI they've been working on? It's in the news, much like the famous corduroy pillow. It is making headlines. Of course, you've heard about it. You have to hear about it. You have to think about it. It seems you have to talk about it. It's one of those phenomenon that even not caring about it becomes a statement in and of itself. You know, when I was a kid in the 90s, it was sort of popular for really cool or really aloof people to tell you that not only do they not have a favorite TV show, they don't even own a television. And I hear that coming out of my own mouth sometimes when, you know, like recently I was asking around for some friends for like investment advice. I know this is what we tune into Major Label Debut to hear about, my financial situation. Don't worry, I'm a podcaster. And everyone's advice was, oh, just ChatGPT. Just put it in ChatGPT and it will tell you what to do with your money. Anyway, the reason I bring this up, luckily, this is not like a news podcast. It's not a current events podcast. But of course, as you've also probably heard, artificial intelligence is in music in some way, in increasing ways and in unclear and obscure ways. But the oncoming tidal wave that everyone sort of talks about and thinks about in hushed tones with a shiver running down their spine is the notion that someday soon, or some might say already, you won't need musicians or creative people or people of any kind to make music at all anymore. That you'll be able to go on one of these AI models, websites, services, and just tell it what kind of song you like, and it will make a song just for you. And obviously, I think that's really relevant to the art and commerce conversation because that really represents the total commodification of music. If you don't need an artist involved at all, you can just make it as a pure asset. It's like in Star Trek when they would go to the replicator and the replicator would make them a cup of Earl Grey tea or an ice cream sundae. And now you can do that with songs as well. For a lot of us, that's not necessarily great news, both from a career perspective. There's going to be even less financial information to put into ChatGPT in the future. But also, if you love music, loving the people who make that music, or at least having a relationship with your perception of the people that make that music is a big part of it. That's what this show is. I'm talking to musicians. I'm going behind the curtain of these artists and these bands, and I mean these groups and these people and these icons that we revere because of how they synthesized their experience in the world, whatever it was, into something beautiful, some art that we all loved. Anyway, all of which goes to say, our guest on the show today is Sam Kogon. Sam is a wonderful musician, a very accomplished musician in his own right. We talk about his music, but mainly the reason he's here today is because he is part of a group that's doing a class action lawsuit against Google, specifically around the way that they trained their music creation AI on a lot of other people's music. Again, this is probably something you've heard about one way or another in the news or on the internet. And Sam and I talk all about it, and we sort of, I think we explain it to one another and hopefully to you as clearly as we can. So I won't try and explain it all now. But suffice to say, this is the first interview where for research I've had to peruse a lawsuit. I've never read a lawsuit before at all. It certainly makes for interesting reading, if not light. Sam and I, as you might expect, are pretty close to the same page in terms of how we feel about these exciting technological developments. And more than anything, it was just really wonderful to get a chance to talk with someone else where I didn't have to sort of explain from zero, like why I find it gross and weird and ugly. You know, this was someone who sort of understood on a fundamental level what some of those just like bone deep objections to this whole rigmarole are. And it made me feel a little less alone and a little less crazy to talk to Sam. So however you feel about all this stuff, or if you're even sick of hearing about it, maybe this is a conversation that will make you feel less alone, or maybe it'll clue you in a little more to why you're non-TV owning friends like me are not so quick to, start using ChatGPT for all of their vacation planning and financial needs. Or maybe you already turned it off as soon as I said AI, and then you went to the AI podcast creator to create a podcast that was more to your liking. Whatever the case, I loved talking to Sam Kogon. It's a big responsibility to take on, to put not just your name like in this lawsuit, but on the lawsuit. If you ironically search up using perhaps Google the phrase Kogon versus Google, that's the name of the lawsuit. Sam's wonderful. I really, really enjoyed this conversation. It felt important to me personally. I think it's really cool and educational, and it's live from the front lines as all of this shit gets figured out. So it seemed like a good time to have the conversation, and I'm really grateful to Sam for joining the show to talk about it. And I've rambled long enough already. I could chop this bad boy up so good with AI, but I won't. Graham Wright's promise to you is that AI will never be used in the expression of my thoughts on this podcast, even and perhaps especially when you wish it would have been. Here's Sam Kogon on Major Label Debut. Sam, this is my first time interviewing a plaintiff on this podcast. And so it was my first time researching by reading a lawsuit, a legal filing, which was much more comprehensible than I had expected. There was very little Latin in it.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, it's like 100 and something pages long. So I was hoping you could sort of start off by just like giving a quick summary of what Kogon v. Google, if I'm not mistaken, in the name. Congratulations, by the way. Does that feel cool to like have your name on that?
It's cool. It's scary, but it's it took some time for it to sink in, but It feels good. It feels like the right time. I'm not shy, and I do sometimes feel like I'm outspoken, and I like to defend, artists' rights. I'm an indie artist, and so having my name on it is like it's kind of a big honor. It's a lot of responsibility, but I feel excited by when I announced on my socials the outpour of just support and like we've got your back, and I got messages from people from all over the world and people posting about it, and Billboard and OK Magazine and music blogs even in Africa are writing about it. So it's like it's a big deal. It's a bigger deal than we even can sort of think about right now, because we're in the Wild West of what this means. And to get back to your question, what this means, what this case really kind of signifies is basically just it's a distrust and it's a misuse of what musicians, you and me included, like we uploaded our music to YouTube under the context that I'm distributing my music. You are a platform such as like other platforms where you put music out. At no point was I ever putting it out on YouTube for my music to be used to train their Lyra model. So at the meat and potatoes of it, it's really just like it's an IP issue, and it's a mistrust and a misuse of, musicians at its core. And that's why I signed on to it, because, there are other lawsuits right now against other AI companies, such as like Suno and Marika, but this one kind of hit home for me a little more because it's YouTube and it's Google, and it's kind of a big deal right now. And I'm glad we're talking about it because it's kind of the Wild West, like I said, as you are aware.
Well, and so maybe everybody knows this now, but I will explain it for anyone out there who might not. And also then maybe you can confirm for me that my general perception is correct. Not that either of us is a, computer engineer or AI expert, but
no.
The gist of these AI things that you can tell it what kind of song you want to hear, and it will spit out a, increasingly convincing sounding simulation of a song. And the way that that's done is that they dump a ton of music into it, and it learns like what the ones and zeros of that music tend to be and which ones and zeros are more commonly found in each genre, et cetera. And then it averages them out into, this end product, which is built out of the ones and zeros that are your music and my music and everybody who put their music on YouTube's music. Is that basically what's going on?
As far as I know, I'm not a tech engineer. I don't know
in major label debut terms, that's about as complex as we get. So that's a good working definition.
Absolutely. Basically, music was put in, used. I don't know the ins and outs, but I know that we weren't told, and there was no contracts made. And, Google and YouTube, which Google owns, is well able to make contracts with musicians. In fact, they do. I know people who have made background music, license-free music, and they get a fee. And so it's done right, and they get paid. The song is then able to be used in any background, video you want to use in YouTube Studio, blah, blah, blah. So they know how to do it right. And that's really also another issue. It's like, okay, so it's one thing where you want to have maybe a stock, catalog of songs, but then it's like, we can literally use any one song to train our things and it's in our, it's in the contract and it's not really there, So it's just a total weird thing. It's like you're putting yourself out there, and at any point, people can just take, and now they're actually doing, they're filing claims against real singers who are having their voices stolen, and they are not able to monetize.
I just saw something like that.
Yeah. So it's nuts. And because we've given so much to these tech companies, it's like they're able to make claims and you can't even fight it. It's bizarre. There's nobody even at these places you can talk to. There's truly. I mean, try getting in touch with Spotify. Try getting in touch,
I truly know from experience. I mean, I remember once DistroKid is like one of the websites that will, if you just own your own music and you want to upload it to Spotify, et cetera, DistroKid is like a medium by which that's done. You pay an annual fee and they put their stuff up there. It's pretty simple. It seems to work pretty effectively, but I had like a real hard time a few years back trying to get in touch with anyone there to solve some really rudimentary, stupid problem. And I ended up writing like a really nasty email calling them basically, parasites and middlemen and vultures. And then they wrote back really quickly and upgraded me to priority artist status. And things got a lot better from there after I blew them up. And even that feels antiquated now, that anyone would care that I was mad at them. Like that feels like it's gone the way of the dinosaur by now.
It's happening so quick. At one point, you could get in touch with these platforms. They had customer support. They had artist A&R reps. I had a friend who was in a band in the 90s, and he worked for, A&R, getting artists in the earlier days. And at first it seemed like, now we're talking about a different company, but it seemed like it's all related.
Yeah.
It seemed like they wanted to care about artists, but Graham, I mean, these companies are not started by artists. They're tech companies, and they're not even tech companies because they're not original. They're buying other people's technology. Apple, Google, Tesla. I mean, none of these people are inventing anything that they sell. They're buying it, from other people, but at least they're buying it. We're not selling our music. It's just getting stolen. So it's like, Apple buys facial recognition software from some, small tech firm. They make a ton of money. Now Apple gets to claim that as their technology and you associate it with them. So what happens when Spotify and all these other places starts taking the songs and you associate it with them versus the artist, which seems like we're headed. It's like stripping the identity, stripping even the metadata, which is what they did to our music, so you can't even find out. So it's just sort of this like monopoly and monopolization of music and taking and stripping us away of our claim to it. And it's why? Because it's put online. I don't know.
The total commodification of it. And we all, I remember when streaming was new, and I remember when iTunes was new, and my band's career was kind of kicking off right around that time. And everyone, we never thought about it for a second. It was just, okay, this is the new frontier. This is the new, like it was records, then it was tapes, then it was CDs, and now it's computers.
Yeah.
And so we just all happily poured our music into these things, only for them to turn around and like a Scooby-Doo villain reveal themselves as tech companies whose only interest in our music was as, dollars in a bottom line or fractions of a cent in a bottom line. And we're seeing this lawsuit feels like one tip of some kind of reckoning that, is at least being attempted.
It is, I'd like to see it as that. It feels like my David and Goliath moment. And even if it's just, hey, this isn't okay. We can't let this happen, because if we let this happen now, then there's really no stopping them. And, last year there were some other artists, big artists. I mean, they put out this record and it was like a silent record, which I thought was cool, but I think it fell on deaf ears, unfortunately, because we are just, all of us are giving everything to tech, and thinking that we're going to get something in return. And it's really just like a cheap, watered down version of anything that's already out there, And unless unless someone invents quantum computing, I don't think AI can actually give us what we really want, which is like a false sense of commodity. And maybe it's like almost like post Amazon. It's like, you can get your things instantly, and now you don't even have to think for yourself. You can draft your text before you send it. You can, ask like questions before you ask them in person. And it's just like a really weird thing, especially now, because I don't know, like we were just talking, it's just like we're putting everything into this, but what are we getting in return? And it's just like not giving you much. And I think maybe people listening, ask yourselves, what am I really getting from AI besides, I think it can be used as a tool. I think there are some possible places where it can be used. I think we probably use it and we have it, and we don't even acknowledge what exactly it is, in terms of like maybe it's your phone suggesting the next word on your screen, or maybe it's in Logic or in Pro Tools, and it's like literally just like, a plugin, and using a plugin as a tool is different than using AI to generate an entire voice or a whole. So I do understand that there are some implications of it, but like I'm saying, it's just it gives you back nothing you could have done. You can do anything it does better as a human. And music was, music has been popular music has been commercialized to become like commercial sound at this point. And I fear that people are losing their ears. And AI music, what happens when people start really getting used to it? I was teaching my little cousin piano recently, and we were talking about it because she had been fooled by an AI song, but now she's able to sort of tell the difference. And it's interesting, speaking to people who are younger, people who are older. Obviously, people like you and I are sort of able to tell. Every now and then I've been fooled, but I stay away from it because I don't believe in it. I'm a purist. I don't use autotune. I don't use Melodyne. No.
Well, I was going to mention that because that exact thing, I was in the studio last year, and I was recording with like a saxophone player and a bassist, and I was playing piano and singing. We just did it live off the floor a few times, and we had the best take. My vocal mic did like a really nasty, like not a beautiful crackle, like a bad, that fucked up the whole thing. Yeah. And the engineer was like, I can take that out with AI. Like I just like put it in and it stems out the crackle. And he did it and it worked perfectly. And I couldn't say no to it, but I don't know, I never put out the song. And I don't think that's why, but it left a weird taste in my mouth because it was too easy, even though I have, I've made records using Beat Detective on drums. I quantize my shit. I fix my shit. I've availed myself of all of the modern gizmos and gadgets that can make up for, technical or human shortcomings in the studio.
Right.
And this is really making me confront like what that actually means and what that does and what it is to sort of outsource the essential humanity of your artistry to a machine that like makes it easy for you. And I wanted to know your thoughts on that, because your songs are, influenced by a time when those gizmos and gadgets weren't available. And, music from the 60s and 70s and even the 80s, you had to play it. And if there was a fuck up on the microphone, you had to live with it or you had to do it again.
Yeah.
And now it's so, I don't know if you get this, but we've tried to make records live off the floor, warts and all. Let's leave the mistakes in. And then the 100th time you've listened to it, the mistake's still there, and you're looking at that plugin, and you can fix it with the click of a button. And do you find it hard to avoid that temptation?
It's too easy, and I think there are times when you can and should use it, because there are a million other people who are using it and not thinking about it. I think it's just like, it's a slippery slope when you start to say, when it's like, it's not just that little crackle pop. It's like, and you zoom in and you're like, wait, that note's a little, can we get that note? And like, oh wait, that one guitar note, like, can we just like, and it's like, that's the kind of stuff where it drives me personally a little nuts. I work with John Agnello on a lot of my recent recordings, and he's just working with John. He's always reminding me, he's like, you want to leave these little artifacts in, because that's what makes those favorite records from the 60s, 70s, 80s. There's something special. And, my favorite band is the Beatles, and they were always on the cusp of technology. Mm-hmm. So it's something to think about. Would they have used digital recording? I mean, they really wanted to multi-track. It's amazing what they could do on only 4 tracks and then bounce down. And then they finally got to 8 tracks. And again, it's not to kick my heels, in the mud and drag, because I think there is something to be said about going with modern times. And, this is where we're at. But I think we're post that, If you really think about it, digital recording, which has been around since the 80s, is not real music. Anything you record onto the computer is not real. It's not real. It's a generated version that sounds close to, and like you said, ones and zeros. So when you record onto Pro Tools, is that AI? No. It's not, because it's still you creating something, and it's still an original thing. And that's something you have to remind yourself, because it's easy to be like, no, I'm going to be pure. I'm going to record onto tape. But at some point, even if you were pressing your music on vinyl, it's got to go digital at some point. There's no more full analog rig. So yes, I do find myself like constantly like switching heads, like being like, no, Sam, it's not 1965. You're not in the Beach Boys. Like, you can use some of these tools, but I still take pride in not doing it, because I love pushing myself as an artist, as a musician. I love to see how far I can go and push myself, my vocals, my guitar. If it's doing 50 takes, usually we don't do that, but so that's sort of where I see it as it. But I don't like these, I don't like the whole generating a whole song. I don't like the whole generating a whole voice. I don't think there's any excuse for it, because music has existed since we've been able to communicate, and maybe even before then. And it was working fine before some tasteless tech bros had this idea to make crappy music, and take from us.
Who can only conceive of music or art or any human expression as like something to make money with. And so, of course, if all a song is like content for Spotify to get to subscribers, then a computer is a much more efficient and optimized way to do that. But if art has like real value, like I believe, and I'm sure you believe, and I suspect that the listeners of this podcast believe it does, then it has to be made by a human, or else it doesn't. Even a perfect, I'm sure in another few years, if it keeps going this way, they'll be able to make some shit that will fool me. Yeah. But it inherently is valueless. It needs to be made by a person. It needs to be ushered into being with all the torture and the shit that we hate and the stuff that everyone at some time or another wants to skip. Oh my God, can an AI write the second verse for me? I'm tired. I worked hard on this song already. Just like do it. But then you've got nothing.
You walk away with, why were you even there? If you're using AI to create your song, why are you even doing it? That's the question I want people to ask themselves. Don't look at those ads that you get. I mean, Graham, do you get the Suno ads and all these ads? Like, my song went from and it's literally a guy hitting a table and it's like, and then they play like, this is what Suno turned it into. And it's like, I mean, it's not good, but it's like a whole song with everything. And to the untrained ear, to someone who doesn't make music professionally, or to someone who doesn't really have talent, and or the skills, it's like this quick thing now, and it's totally cheapened music and the creative process. It's like sure, anyone can whistle, but can you learn how to train that and train your voice and learn how to record and learn there's so much fun things you miss. And I've worked with so many great artists, and I been fortunate to work with some of the Beach Boys and with the Left Bank, and even writing. I'm writing with Patti Smythe. I mean, these artists have been all my mentors, and they all talk about the glory days, and we could have that. For many it's still like that. Some of the major artists. But the access to everything, I don't know if it's not healthy. It's not good for where we're going. I think music can uplift a society. If you look at the Billboard charts from the 60s into even the 90s, you have amazing, diverse things. You have people, and we're talking Billboard, so everyone, not just musicians, everyone, all walks of life. If you look back in the 50s and 60s, people are listening to swing and rock and beautiful orchestrations. I mean, you've got people like Nina Simone and Frank Sinatra, and and that was accessible to average Americans knew who these people were. Now it's like the music that is consumed by the masses might as well be AI. It's been so because of the label. Because labels have lost their taste, because they have made all these deals with tech companies, because they have prioritized tech and profits. Let's be honest, they've always been obsessed with making money, but this is beyond. And it's also exploitative. They exploit their catalogs, they exploit the artists that are no longer alive. It's really weird, and it's a sign of the times. It's just like music was I said this earlier, music is becoming commercialized sounds, I mean, if you listen to artists I don't even want to, I'm not going to say big artists' names.
You don't want to talk shit, I understand.
But there's a certain female artist, and she could use, a few other chords in her progressions, I think a minor chord. And we celebrate, that's great that she's a songwriter, but I'm sure there's Suno being used on some of these big artists. We don't even know what we're hearing these days at this point.
Well, it suggests this really sad, bleak future where, the kind of music that we're talking about, and not necessarily, it doesn't have to be aesthetically, it doesn't have to be a genre exercise in throwback music, but just music that's made by human hands all the way through, which I think we agree just has more spiritual value, is going to be for only the select few aficionados of it. And your average, John radio listener is just going to be getting slop poured down their throat. And even if they might not know the difference or care about the difference, it's still, they're being deprived in a really meaningful way. And in a way that kind of, this is the kind of thing that maybe is refutable by a historian, but seems to me that never before in human history have the masses been like deprived of music made by humans. Even if we would look at that music and say it's shitty or it's not to our taste or it's lowest common denominator, it was still made, even if it was made cynically, it was made by cynical people, which itself is like revealing and illuminating of the human soul or one corner of it.
Absolutely. I mean, shame on record labels for not continuing the legacy, which is A&R, which doesn't exist anymore. A&R now finds artists who already have, millions of, streams, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of followers. They're just coming on at the very end. And they're only interested in such music, which now has, diluted and devolved in a lot of ways. I was so excited that the electric guitar was starting to come back, and now it's sort of like, I think that there is like rock is kind of starting to come back, which is great. But no, like these labels, I know they have to do their job. I know they have to sell, but they also are the ones who are tastemakers, and they gave up, making the deals with these streamers. They gave up that ability to be the tastemaker. The physical record stores also are tastemakers. Your like local radio station, your non-clear channel radio station, those are tastemakers. But they're constantly being, and I'm not saying there wasn't payola back in the day. There were records, there were plenty of bad artists that were being inflated, But now we're at a time where it's like, but that was like, people knew it. They were like, oh yeah, they're pretty, but they have a bad voice. But like, whatever, it's that famous starlet and she can have a disco song. Let's give her one song. Now it's like, oh, they've got this, they've got that. But it's like at the core of it, Graham, it's like, what is the substance? And there is zero substance. And you have to, now people are finding it through different ways. They follow the small labels. They listen to indie, college radio. But like, you're not going to find stuff now on these playlists, discovering music. AI has affected me in that way, in that my stuff, I've noticed my play numbers are like, and I don't really ever take that into too much consideration because it's just numbers. But my numbers have listening on some of those streamers have gone down significantly in the last year, just because I've noticed the influx of AI. And so many of my other friends, they're like, yeah, my monthly listener count is down. And it's just because they can, like we said, these are tech companies and they can direct anybody to flow into that or out of that.
And they're not incentivized at all to do otherwise.
No.
They don't care what the subscribers are hearing as long as they keep subscribing. And the cheaper it is,
Absolutely. We're going to get to that. I have a songwriting collaborator, Megan, and she and I actually have a couple of songs we've written together that are going to be on my new record, which I'm really excited about.
Right.
So she was, and I'm not saying this is a glamorous job, but like there were these little music houses that would sign artists to make one-of-a-kind songs for, let's say, your wedding or your mom's birthday or, random things, really crazy things sometimes. But AI has taken all of that away from artists. And that was a great way to make, $200, $500 on a song. And now you can go onto any of these apps and in 2 seconds have a song about your dog eating spaghetti, and it's like, I'm not saying that like everybody wants to do those jobs, but that is no longer a viable source of income.
And the fact of those jobs, again, being done by humans, was meaningful and weird. And those people are even, you were talking about the payola and like all the many crooked and corrupt characters who have plagued the music industry and invented the music industry and driven it forward in so many ways.
Yeah.
And maybe this is just my aesthetic preference, but these were characters. These were unique, strange humans with, bizarre opinions and things to say. And they left an imprint on the world. Even the shittiest one of those guys' imprint is so much more interesting to me than now. More and more music industry people, whether that's record labels or tech companies who are industry adjacent, they're all acting like tech CEOs. They're all wearing like the same $1,000 tapered sweatpants, wearing the same Apple Watch. And like, it's just not interesting. They don't seem like interesting people.
I agree. I mean, I can't tell you. I used to follow all these labels because I was like, oh, this label they signed cool artists. Maybe one day that'll be me. I remember your band was, I actually saw you guys play at All Points West in 2008.
Oh my God.
If you can remember that.
Wow. Yeah. I do remember. This on the island, right?
It was, I think that year Tool shut it down because of the mud that they basically turned the entire field into.
Sounds about right.
But that era, even that was a lovely boom of indie music. And, at that time, it still felt like the labels were, making things happen for their artists and cared. There was a little more of like this, a little more excitement.
Yeah.
Now it's just like, I don't know what, I'm kind of exhausted by every now and then I get something on my Instagram feed that's great and it's an original songwriter. And thank God that happens. But really, I'm not loving social media as a source of finding artists. I think labels have pushed artists into doing that.
Yeah.
Imagine if you guys had to do TikTok, back in 2008 all the time,
Oh my God. Well, and I think it's crazy to me, and I have nothing, but I'm talking a lot of shit, and I know people in the record labels and everything who are still great. I don't want to paint too broad a brush.
They're great. They're putting up with their higher ups, and they have to figure out.
But as musicians now, I can't help but think we are forced almost to do ourselves this disservice of going on TikTok and Instagram and social media and singing and dancing and just pleading basically for a crumb of attention in a way that then makes it, when you turn around and gripe about the AIification, people don't take you seriously because they just saw you on Instagram with a big smile on trying to do a trend or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's so hard to explain even to yourself that this is where people are and this is what feels necessary or seems to be necessary. I don't know if it works. Towards the end of Tokyo, we were starting to have to tentatively engage with some of that stuff. And it's so, especially that we were, starting to push 40 and it looked weird on us. It felt weird. It didn't feel natural in any way. There was no way to, and I think newer artists have an easier time with whatever the social media they grew up with is. You have to kind of like embody it. You have to be able to get inside it and at least find a way to make it work with your personality. But I think that, TikTok is just too new for me to ever do it in a way that's like authentic because I can't understand it.
I'm with you. And really it's affected the way I've noticed how people perform because they're used to now performing for their Twitch audience and they're used to performing for their phone. Maybe they're live on TikTok, but then you see them play. Maybe you see an artist at, let's say, I don't know, where's a venue in LA that they host a lot of TikTok bands. Oh, I know, the Echoplex. So if you go to the Echoplex and you see a band there that has a lot of screaming fans, they're not, I feel like we're missing something because we're putting it all on the phone and the performances are kind of lackluster. Mm-hmm. I did just see a new artist though that was the performance was amazing. So there are still people doing it and I try to carry the torch with my music.
And I have seen, there's one thing that seems to work well and simply, which is like prodigiousness. And, I've seen a lot of just really, really, really good guitar players playing guitar really, really well. And that's always impressive. And if you do that on any social media, it stands a chance of getting some attention simply because who's not impressed by someone who can play the guitar extremely fast? Now, that's not the be all and end all of guitar playing, but at least it's human hands.
I agree. I just fear that it's a little bit of a trap because you spend so long. I mean, I've made videos on Instagram and I have, it's so embarrassing. You look back at your phone and you see like, oh my God, I just did 50 takes. And if I was just recording or just doing this, writing a song just to demo, it would have been done the first time. But we're kind of putting ourselves through another lens. And I don't know. I don't think it's great for the creative process. I think it's a trap.
And you're working for Meta all of a sudden. You know, we have this problem with the podcast where it seems like the only mechanism to get attention is social media. And then you work on your social media clips and you realize really quickly that when one goes really, does big numbers, the translation for your own product, for the long conversation that is what this show is about, a few more people might check it out, but mostly it's like, 20,000 people saw it, paused at it, and then scrolled past it and stayed on Instagram a little longer. And so Instagram benefits from my labor once again.
Well said. I couldn't agree more with that statement. And I think people need to sort of realize that it's like time, as I get older, I realize time is truly a resource and truly the most valuable resource you have next to health. And maybe next to your musical ability, right? And then we get into other things that we appreciate. But I think because we're musicians, how we spend our time is so important. And it goes by so quick, especially out in LA. And it's just like, are we going to look back in the next 10 years and say, oh, geez, I'm going to look back at all of my Instagram stories that I spent hours on? Or do you go back and listen to those records that you made, or maybe you didn't make because you were too busy making the Instagram or the TikTok? So that's why you use AI to generate your music for you, so you can just spend more time on Instagram.
That's what's so crazy about it. I wanted to ask if you've had this experience in your personal life as well. I have been like Donald Sutherland pointing in Body Snatchers, shocked at just how quickly almost every single person I know has just started answering like every question with, ChatGPT can do a really good job of that. Just outsourcing everything instantaneously. And I keep wondering, what is the end goal of having ChatGPT do everything for you? What are you trying to make time for?
Yeah.
If it's all just going in the computer, you're just going to, so that you can sit and look out the window?
Right.
I guess it is fun to look out the window.
It can be. Depends on where you're looking. But I think it is a distraction. It is a new little trick. It is a new, it's kind of like, it's a little evil. As I feel like the phone, we're starting to get when was the last update? When was the last time a phone was like, wow, I can't believe you can do that.
Yeah, right?
So now we're kind of at this point, and AI is now taking that over. And now the phones are coming with it, built into it. So it's just a way to it's just a new way of keeping you distracted. Is it any better than when like everything was in the 50s, let's say, and it was all mono-ish culture and the voices and the news were all in cahoots and you got is there something to that? I think there is something lost in I think that's isolating. I think this is isolating.
Yes.
And I think that's where people in isolation get these crazy ideas. There's people who are on chat and they think that they've discovered something that no one else has discovered. And I do feel sorry for these people because it's like, they're being lied to because they're being told like, here you go, this is the future.
Yeah.
And,
that's what... Sorry, I'm sorry to interrupt you. You're singing my tune right now. It's because I hear myself saying these things, and I know that there's such like an old man yells at cloud quality to it, and it can sound so like, I'm just being a Luddite on purpose. I can't handle the future, but it feels to me like the only future they're offering us is this Silicon Valley billionaire, penny that they throw at us in the gutter. And they're stealing all of the possibilities and horizons of what progress could and should be. And so guys like us are forced to just, it's like instead of new music being invented, if you want human music, you go back to the Beatles again. You go back to the 70s again. You're throwing back. And that's wonderful. And I love that music and I always want to hear it. But someone needs to be inventing new music. And it's like the horizon is getting so narrowed that I'm sure someone will do it. I'm sure, life finds a way, but it feels like they're making it really hard.
They're making it hard. Everything is increasingly harder. It's true. It would be amazing if there was a new genre or some kind, and there are some of these subgenres that come out where it's like, band country meets, like more of like, urban and like that happened years ago already. But for me, the way I write as an artist, I feel like I am kind of carrying the torch for all of my mentors. I started writing songs when I was like 9. My mom started me on the Beatles, which was good. But when I was like started to play guitar around 8, and then really kind of started learning my chords and things, I was recording, I have my first tape demos. And this was in 2001, 2000. I mean, I was doing that. That's not 20, 30 years after those songs were being recorded, but in the same way that they were making demos. Now, all I do is, the only difference is if I have a song idea, I do a little voice memo on my phone. But I'm still recording a lot on tape. In high school and college, I was so lucky because I grew up in upstate New York in the Hudson Valley, and Pete Seeger was around and still protesting and performing, and I got to know him a bit. And he told me this story about visiting like this small Scandinavian town, and he was introduced to everyone as this song maker. And that title was very cool to hear. I was like, songwriter we hear, but song maker. And it's true because you're making something from nothing, and there's something very magical and beautiful about that. And music is kind of capturing the human soul in, sound. And so I think I don't know why that kind of is echoing in my head, but song maker is like such a cool way to kind of identify. And so I've always sort of thought about that for me as a songwriter, as a song maker, so when I'm making my music, I'm thinking about the worlds I'm creating. I'm thinking about the sounds that are going into it. I'm really thinking production, everything kind of. And those are things I had to learn, just like you had to learn. It took so long to go from my first tape demo, which is like me on a nylon string, to like my latest single, which has 50 tracks of real instruments and so it's like, I don't know. I fear that we're losing that, regardless of whatever new music comes out, and there will be new music. There always is, and there's always people fighting this AI beast. But for my stuff, I'm not trying to sound like an old artist, but I'm definitely influenced and inspired by them because the way they were doing it was sort of like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Like there's something beautiful about this, And for a long time, besides the invention of CDs and Pro Tools, music, the quality just got better. The best recording quality is probably in the late 70s when they've Japan has figured out the best tape, or Studer is amazing too. But and then we lost it, and then it kind of just went like that, and that's kind of just come back. But now AI, so it's long spiel.
Well, it's a real complex brew of philosophy and reality and history and considerations and how we all personally feel and collectively feel. And I'm realizing more and more there's no easy, pithy way to sum it up. It's really, even, this, you were saying there's other lawsuits and this is just one tiny part. And the AI thing, I'm sure by design is being presented to us as such an immense, gigantic single force. It's just this tidal wave that's coming is what they want you to think. Even though I'm sure in reality what Suno is versus what, I don't know, ChatGPT is versus what, I don't know what any of them are. I don't use them either. The movie one and the music one and the writing one and you know, I'm sure there's like medicine ones. They're probably pretty different things. And if they could, you know, in a different world, they might be described in a way that's less enervating to guys like us. But it just feels like any sphere that you can get into this thing feels meaningful because it demonstrates humanity. And it, even just to stand up and say, hey, we artists we don't like this. We're not on board with this. This harms us and it harms our career and it has repercussions. It's not free. Never mind the fact that they're like, you know, it costs like one rainforest per calculation. It also, you know, it costs art and it costs soul. And it's, I think people just don't realize that. They think it's just another fast thing on their phone that helps. And so it all has such value to stand up against it.
Yeah, I mean, it's also that. It's I went to school actually for environmental science. Okay. And I have my degree in environmental science and policy. And I mean, it just on the environmental implication of it. I heard someone telling me recently they're going to maybe start charging AI as like a utility because of you know, how much water it uses, how much power it drains. And I was like, wow, that's interesting. I wonder if we'll even have the choice to opt out of that if that comes to be. There's so many things that we have in our life that is regulated. Obviously, in this administration, we're losing a lot of regulation that was protecting our health. The Environmental Protection Agency, poof. I mean, food, oh my goodness, what happened there? I mean, but if you live in society, there has to be regulatory things. And this is the Wild West, as I keep saying, with music and AI music. And if there's no regulation now, and the president and the precedent, not president, but if it's not set now, like, what do we do? And can we go back now to pre-AI times? Could they change their terms and say, listen, I mean, for a second with TikTok almost being banned, we've seen social media pages collapse. I mean, we saw Vine disappear. We saw Twitter become its mutant form. Yeah. So like, I don't know, at some point, these places could just shut down and people would be really sad because they'd be missing their AI husband or wife. But I don't know. Could that happen? Could the right solar flare happen where Instagram and all these AI? I mean, like, that's kind of my dream. Don't tell anybody.
Mine literally the solar flare is.
Except then
every time there's one in the news.
Then our hard drives, though. Think about our
precious voice memos.
Our music too is everything.
It's true.
But you know, but the environmental impacts of it, because of where we are in the world right now, it makes sense why these things are being allowed to continue without much. And in terms of the profits too, I mean, the money is why this is, and they're putting so much money into it now also that they're going to start charging people for it. So my hope is that it will almost self-regulate eventually because people are going to not want to have to pay for, maybe they'll get 10 searches a day and then they'll have to pay. And maybe they'll pony up, but a lot of people don't.
Well, and just the way, you know, the dead internet theory thing of more and more.
Oh, isn't that interesting?
It's so interesting. And I have this accelerationist impulse with streaming services where I think, well, okay, maybe if they just fill Spotify with fake AI music and then bots are signing up to listen to it to like generate fake numbers so that the shareholders can continue to feel like growth is happening, it will just become such a ghost town that real people will just leave it behind and they'll go seek out real human music somewhere else. And so Silicon Valley can have like a fake version of itself that just keeps on humming away cheerfully and the rest of us can go live. That might be a little optimistic, but...
That would be nice. It does feel like, I mean, are we at that point where it's just two computers talking to each other and we're just watching and we're like, oh, that's cool. You know, how many posts do we get fed that are like not their bots commenting on it. So I feel though that we are probably at that point. And again, this is just an isolating thing. It makes people feel like they have a best friend and something. It stops you from reaching out to people. It gives people bad ideas. It can totally, if you play around with it, it like will totally misconstrue what you're trying to say, and it gets names wrong. It gets places wrong. If you put yourself in, if you were to search Tokyo Police Club, let's say, and a song or an album, it will start giving you fake song names. It will say that you wrote with this person and this person produced this. And it's like, oh, I have been around people talking about facts that they think are totally as plain day facts. And it's like, no, because we're at the point now where if you Google something, it doesn't actually mean it's real. What is real at this point? And what makes something good? Does it have to be real? Yes.
Yes. Well, and I guess this is something I get interested in is, the institution of music criticism has really fallen from, wherever its heights were, whenever that was, that music criticism was at its most vital and influential. It's not now. And I start to feel like, oh, wait, those are like the dogs in Terminator that can recognize the Terminators when people can't.
Yeah.
We need now more than ever someone who can sort of understand and translate to people the hollowness of this fake art. And I don't think that it's all, part of a massive conspiracy, but things have aligned very perfectly for this moment to befall us. The devaluation of music through piracy, which I engaged in very enthusiastically as a teenager, and most of us did, and then streaming also turning it into you can have every song for $9.99 a month. It's just no music has value, and so it's easy now that most young people just never lived in a world where you paid meaningful money for one album or one song. Even iTunes is old as hell now. And so, who cares that Suno can spit out a song for free? All songs are free. What's the difference?
I think the difference is hopefully the difference is that person is connecting with the real stuff, and it makes you hope that like there's something in your song that makes that person go and read about you or your lyrics or look you up or look up or just find similar artists or, I don't think someone could get inspired from an AI song. I think it's background music for now, I think it's like Muzak. But even if even Muzak is good, Muzak has real musicians.
Yeah, like players who are making money to do sessions, and not that I guess you're only going to get a certain amount of sympathy if you're complaining about AI as being like you're taking jobs from musicians, because most people aren't worried too much about like the vibraphonist that was making session rates do Muzak. But I think it's so beautiful that there's people out there that are making a go of it, playing like percussion on Muzak recordings every day. Those are professionals. Those are, those are human artisans.
I mean, for work, I've been composing with a team for a couple of shows on the BBC. And what's
cool.
the beauty of that is, we get to have, if I'm not singing on something or playing a little guitar or something, you get an amazing musician to come in, do a session. There's especially in LA. I mean, why do we come out here? It's to do our thing professionally. And there are such amazing musicians that are not getting tapped in. And unfortunately, there are great plugins. There's great contact instruments, but like luckily, as someone behind the scenes, I do know a lot of people use them. A lot of people use fake synths or like sampled stuff, which is fine. But there's nothing better than having the real oud player come in, the real,
Yes.
So, but it's exposing people to that. It's all about experiencing it in person. I'm also I teach a lot of music and showing people, what you're listening to and having that communication, having a community you can go to. I'm so lucky that in LA, there's amazing songwriting circles, and there is a very good listening community here. So I still feel like that's here. I do feel like it's in New York as well. It's a little less. I spent so many years in New York, and the venues have all kind of slowly, there's only a few left, and promoters, there aren't many great promoters. My late friend Billy Jones from Baby's All Right, he was one of a kind of promoter that you don't really get these days. I mean, but these are all the types of people that have sort of been pushed out by like Live Nation and by big corporations. And those were the people also exposing you to new music. But that's what people have to do, is like, you have to get out of the house. You have to get off the computer. It's really as easy as turning it off. Like, we do have the choice. And that's the thing. It's like, people do have, to sound like John Lennon, people have the power. And it's also really hard.
Yep. They make it hard on purpose.
I know I'm addicted. Hi, my name is Sam. I'm addicted to my phone. The sounds, even like the sounds on your iPhone are made to sound pleasing so that you do it and it satisfies something.
The tactile haptic feedback when you click a little widget on or off, and there's like somehow the screen feels like a button under your thumb. It's very impressive gizmo creation. I'll hand it to them.
Maybe I'm just thinking, because I love this conversation. What if I think maybe AI and tech can be treated such as junk food, where it's like, okay to have it once in a while, but don't consume that as your main source of nutrition. Otherwise, you're going to, you are what you eat. You are what you listen to. You are what you read. You are the company you keep. And unfortunately, this is making us all become little zombies, little consumers. So
my call to action with the phone is turn your phone black and white. I didn't invent that, but it really works. Every phone, they bury it in the accessibility menu, but it's easy to, if you Google it, I'm sure AI will give you a relatively accurate summary of where it's hidden. And it really makes your phone less enticing. And I turned mine black and white, and I just found myself putting it down faster, picking it up less frequently. And that's what I needed to do to break my addiction. Because I'll feel my hand will go for it. Or if there's like a glasses cloth sitting next to me that has a bright color on it, I'll see the bright color out of the corner of my eye and think it's a notification on my phone. I remember, people talk about the ghost vibration in the pocket, and like, I
get that.
Weird
I actually
shit, man.
get that. I have that. I have the ghost vibration. I mean, what is happening is that we're forgetting that we are animals, and the lights make us get our attention. Not that I'm condoning any illicit use of any type of substance, but when you're on mushrooms, your phone is the least interesting looking thing, as I've been told. I don't know firsthand.
Allegedly.
But when you look at your screen, it looks so fake. So I've been told. And it's like, you don't want anything to do with it. And you're almost able to see it as it is, which is this little screen projecting stuff at you, which isn't real.
It's like when rain falls on it and then suddenly a raindrop is refracting, just like, oh, there's just RGB color in here. And also it stops working in the rain. It's almost like any exposure to something real in the world just saps it of all its power.
So that's something kind of saying it now, it's great to remind ourselves, like, we are the original iPhone. We have this amazing brain that we don't use nearly as enough. And music is the best thing for your brain. I mean, people are in nursing homes with Alzheimer's and have lost their ability to talk, and then and have dementia, and then they play them their favorite song from the time in their life when they were younger, and it's like they turn right on. And I don't see anything else doing that for people. Music is truly the original form of magic, if you think about the definition.
That's real magic,
Absolutely.
To pull someone back like that is a power that cannot be created. It cannot be controlled. It's elemental in a real way.
I do not believe AI music could do that. I do not believe that. Maybe in 60 years or 70 years when Gen Z is starting to become that age group, and they'll be like, here, put on, and they play them their favorite song, and it's AI. I mean, that would be
it's like the Mr. Beast joke. Techno song that was number one in 2032 during his presidential campaign.
I mean, that could be, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. And we live in this weird nostalgic culture now where it's like, we're post like, what is this decade? I can't wait for the 2000s. Like, oh, like now it's like anything. So in that sense, there's a chance for things to go back, and things seem to always do.
Yes.
You know?
Yes, I really agree.
In the 90s, it was like the 60s. Again, musically, there was a little bit of that. Rock then in the early aughts was a little more like 70s. Then we kind of had the dip, which was probably related to like the disco dip. And now, I don't know. It's hindsight is 2020. So.
And something is going to come that none of us can predict. And that maybe, that I won't like, I would love nothing better than some new real music that is baffling and incomprehensible to me. I'm almost 40. It's almost time for me to not understand new music anymore. But I just need it to be made by people for people. And I can't wait to see what it is and where it comes from and what it does. I find hope there.
I agree. I hope that there's some new maybe artist platform that's no AI is allowed on it. And, maybe it doesn't have every artist on it, but maybe it's better that way. Maybe we don't need access to everything because let's be honest, over COVID, I had this idea and come to find out I wasn't the only person, which was like, I'm going to create a different streaming platform that is good for artists. And it's like, there are these platforms. But if my concept at the time was just like, how many artists do you really listen to? Spotify gives you your end of the year wrap. And it's like, oh, let's be real. If you look at 50 people, they're listening to like the same 10 artists and maybe even less. And maybe they get fed more here and there. So at the time I was thinking, what if you had this platform where maybe you don't have access to everyone, but maybe you're allowed to just pay for like, maybe your monthly subscription of $10 or $11 goes to 10 artists that you choose. And then maybe there's something built into the platform where they still have like some curation where real people are giving you, curated lists, and they're not based on your listening. They're just based on what these people are doing, because the personalized algorithm is the devil. But come to find out, this was not that original of a concept. I just wanted people to start thinking about music like food. And if you think about it, it makes sense. You want to support the small local farmer. You want to know their name. You want to know what you're eating. And you could do that with music on that level too. You could actually have a streaming service where the artist you're supporting directly. You maybe don't have access, like in the supermarket, to every single Kroger brand, but you have great fresh vegetables right there at your fingertips. And so that was sort of my dream like 5 years ago, but that was before AI was even really in the vernacular. So maybe it could maybe that type of thing could happen. Again, is it going to happen on a massive scale? I don't know. I don't know. Spotify just rolled out that AI like little check mark. I noticed that my verified check mark is gone though. So I don't know what I did. I probably didn't upload enough. This is the other problem I have with these things. It's like if you don't upload enough pictures, and if you don't like add a bio, and if you don't link if you don't put your LinkedIn and your mom's Facebook page on spot, like they're like punishing you. So I'm making music. I'm not here for you. I'm not here for you.
Yeah, I don't work for Spotify.
No.
HMV never made me come in and organize the CDs on there. They weren't like, hey, file Tokyo Police Club under T, because we're not going to do it for you.
Exactly.
Heading towards wrapping up and back to the lawsuit for a moment.
Yeah.
I was curious, speaking of, Spotify punishing you for not uploading a sufficient number of photos of, of yourself, like making eye contact, vertically oriented.
I have some good ones up there, but yeah, I don't know.
I believe it. It's not enough. Was there any concern or conversation before you signed on about, repercussions or the revenge of the industry writ large?
Bring it on. I honestly let them come after me because they're not going to look good. They already look bad because they did something wrong and they know they did. And everybody also it's kind of in the zeitgeist. Everyone knows like these tech companies aren't good and for, the individual. I was the thought did kind of cross my mind, like, okay, what does this mean? Are the G mafia coming for me? But these are the times where it's like, you cannot, like I said, people have the power, always will, always have. It's just something we sometimes forget. And this is one of those times where we have to remind ourselves, no, I didn't sign up for this. I didn't sign away my rights to you. And this isn't okay. So it's freaky. It is freaky because it's like when I see my name next to Google, it's like, but hey, there's been cases like this where and luckily there are other artists on this one too. Yeah. It just happens to be my name, but there have been so many cases where people take on the United States government and they win. So
yes.
Yeah. So yes, it's scary. Yes, it's freaky, but I think it's really good to do stuff that pushes you a little bit out of your comfort zone. Yeah. So I had this opportunity and I just dove in because, man, I've been taken advantage of before, professionally. I've had songs, taken from me. I've had my voice taken, so it's like, I gotta see, no one is going to represent you better than you. So yeah, there it is. Yeah.
There's enough of that theft and exploitation and screwing over of artists that goes on between humans. We don't need a gigantic tree-fueled machine to exploit artists. We're pretty good at it as the beasts we are.
And what it does is it diminishes it does what Instagram did to photographers. It does, and that I'd say that with a grain of salt because I'm an Instagram user. And do I compare my selfie on my story to a, Henry Diltz photograph? No. It's like people are still doing what they do. People are still using the old film. So I hope that we are all able to just kind of to collectively not rely on these things and use what we have at our, what we have, real skills. And sorry, what was the last thing you said?
God knows. Something about AI.
Yeah.
Well, I was curious about when I think of it in terms of when an album gets announced and okay, at 11 a.m. we're going with the press release. Yeah. This is when a lawsuit gets filed. Was there a moment when you knew it was being publicized and did you mark that moment in any way or were you otherwise occupied?
I was approached by the law firm. A group of us were approached, and I decided to sign on to it. I did not know at the time it was going to be named after me. So I actually found that out after the case was announced, and it was posted in Billboard and OK Magazine. And I saw my name up there. So I called up the attorneys and, they said, we think you'd be a great person to represent this group of musicians. And I was super honored. And, as an indie artist too, it kind of makes sense to sort of this is me. I'm not hiding anything. I create my music. I put it out there. You guys are the ones who went against our agreement. And yeah, so I would just say I was pleasantly surprised. I did talk to them to see what I can and cannot talk about. And so I took a little bit of time to post about it. I posted about it last month. It had been announced, I think on the 8th. I believe it was filed in early March. And then I sat with that for a little while. I told my family and some friends. And then I decided, I think it's important to talk about this. And I'm allowed to discuss, in terms of how it's affected me and how I feel about this. And it's, like I said, I feel like I'm kind of coming into my own here to represent other people. And it feels good. It really does feel good. It's not what I thought was going to happen. Life is kind of wild. But as someone who's always fought for artists' rights, mine, and always just been sort of like, I mentor a lot of friends too, just having had many roles in this industry. So it feels like maybe I've been things have been leading up to this moment in that sense. But I'm ready to, ready to fight the fight.
You said that you're working on a new record. How is that going? And has this process energized you in any unique way? Or have you sensed in the studio any impact of all this madness on how you feel or how you're behaving?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm excited to focus on my music and continue putting it out. And this new record, I'm even more excited to do that. I've actually, these are songs I've written, worked on, all real musicians, all real, no auto-tune at all. And I'm really proud of them. And it's almost sort of like, in a way, it's me proving like, hey, listen, this case is going on. It's not going to stop me from being me. And let me show you what a real musician and a real songmaker can do. So it's given me some juice. Yeah. And
are the singles that have been coming out from these sessions, are they sort of from this world of music that you're cooking up?
So my latest single, America, that was John Agnello did mix that one. I may sneak that onto my new record, but that was sort of that was like a single I offered during the previous last election, but I had written that song during COVID and kind of kept adding verses as things became crazier and crazier. And I did actually have to, at one point I told myself, I was like, okay, this isn't a painting. You're not like, an 80-year-old. You got to put this song out. And so I had to stop myself. The last verse I wrote was about the overturning of Wade versus Roe, which was, I was just like, this is just like, so many shocking things just kept happening. So, but I've been using that song as sort of the backing track. It's sort of been my anthem for this because, everybody has a right to vote and a right to smoke and a right to choke. Living in America is one of the lines. But, the chorus is, you bought it, you broke it. We can't wait another 4 years. Sure, it has a political lean to it, but it's sort of been my personal, fight the system, fight the power. The new album is not, it's more of like, it's a positive message, really. And a lot of the songs are kind of me trying to inspire other writers and I like I said, I've been a mentor for a lot of musicians, and it makes me feel good when I can put some good out. And I've been loving my music. My last record I made with John, my last EP with him, which had this song Barbed Wire, and All I Want to Do and a couple other tracks that I was just super jazzed on. And I loved the feeling that we kind of were able to capture. So we went back in and made this record at Dreamlands up in Woodstock, and really captured the room and the feeling of these songs. And I guess those songs are, if anything, it just gives you a feeling of human connection and love. And I'm trying to be, I'm opening up about a lot of things on the record. And, I feel like it's my closest to like me kind of yet. And so I'm excited for that to come out, especially with all this in the air, because it's just, I'm still going to do it regardless, but it kind of gives me a little extra, like I said, it gives me a little extra wind in my sails to finish this record and put it out, because it's like, no, listen, you want to hear real music? This is real music. And
it's a real reminder of how meaningful it is. And there's so much, even before AI slop gets in the mix, we're exposed to a tremendous amount of music. In some ways, it's never been easier to dump your music onto the pile. It's arguable whether it's actually been democratized in any meaningful way. But if you want to find music, there's bazillions of songs out there to hear. And it can be, or I find it easy sometimes to take it for granted and to write a song, record a song, put a song out, and just kind of feel like, well, nobody cares. It's just like in the pile. But this conversation is reminding me of what we're talking about, of that every human artistic expression is a genuinely meaningful act. And especially in stark contrast with the, algorithmic, artificial intelligence, computer generated simulacra of same.
And just to echo that, I genuinely believe if you put something out into this world, into the universe, it might not come back to you instantly, but, putting out a song where you've put a lot of these emotions into, like that song America, when I released that, I got feedback, which like people really critically listening to things because I had something to say. And so, yeah, challenge like to whoever is a musician watching this podcast right now, like, and you're sitting on a record or you're sitting on a song, like, just challenge yourself and make yourself be a little uncomfortable and think about putting that out, because, what's stopping you? I mean, don't get bummed on the fallout of like, oh, that didn't become a hit, but like, think about your catalog is, we're all told like it's our biggest asset is our catalog. And I'm not even trying to think about music as like a commodity, but like, just continue building and putting out your music and work on your voice, and don't get discouraged, and play the songs out live, because you'll get an instant reaction that way if someone's in the room. Sometimes we play and there's 5 people there, but
that's 5 instant reactions, even if they're, if they're ignoring you. Not that it's fun to do that, but it's real, and the music is like hitting their ears. The literal sound waves are literally going into their heads, and they're hearing it. And now their life has been altered in some minuscule way for hearing that song, and maybe for the better, maybe for the worse, maybe to no end. But it's real.
You will never know unless you try, and you will never know what you mean to someone else, and what your song or what, let's say me doing this, signing on to this lawsuit, like what that means for someone else. And it's been humbling and been a lot for me to think about. So if I can apply that to my music, that's pretty cool. It's like a lot to like download, but it's cool. I'm not happy that I have to sign on to this thing, but I'm genuinely happy to represent us. And it's exciting. And I hope that it's in our favor. I hope, we win as musicians. I think we will.
Do you have any sense of the like time frame that this is going to unfold along? I imagine it moves at a glacial pace.
I do not know. I don't know. I do know a judge was assigned to the case, but I haven't really had an update since. It could take a long time. It could I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. So maybe we'll come back on here and have an update.
Yeah, definitely. We will be monitoring it closely. I really, to my great surprise, enjoyed reading. I didn't read every word of the thing, but going through the arguments, I know this is how a lawsuit works, but it was really beautiful to see the argument built point by point and to see this sort of declarative, irrefutable, black and white, just like lawyerly airtight descriptions of things that I understand intuitively or even experientially, but to see them put down that way, boom, 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 this, therefore this, therefore this, therefore that. It was very pleasing, because I agree with it, but also it's just like, it's very elegant as a form of expression.
It's nice to have lawyers who understand what goes into the creative process,
Yeah.
And also who are defending you, because these giant corporations have so much money and so many, teams of attorneys. And at the end of the day, they can't really, they really can't argue with what we're saying, which is like, hey, you guys broke our trust and you used something without our permission. And that's not okay. Simple. I mean, yes, what you read is much more eloquent, but that's basically what we're saying.
That point. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we're saying.
Well, genuinely, Sam, I thank you for a great conversation.
My pleasure.
For standing up and lending your name and your story and your soul to this cause on behalf of musicians and frankly humans everywhere. I really think it matters, and it does my heart good to even know that it's going on out there. So really thank you, and I hope it only brings good things into your life.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you so much for this conversation and for just having this dialogue. This is kind of the stuff where I think maybe the change starts from these types of talks. So anyone else listening, have these conversations.
Yes, exactly. You don't just have to go along with it because it's on the computer.
You have to go along with it because it's us.
That's right. And so that brings me to our ceremonial final major label debut question.
Okay.
Which I'm
very excited.
Often we're talking about a record, and so I ask it in the past tense, but you are working on a record, or are you finished the studio portion of cooking up your record?
Yeah, mostly in the mixing stage, but there are a couple of overdubs left.
Okay. That's not the question. The question is, while you have been in the studio working on this, what have you been eating?
Oh boy.
The important stuff.
When we were in the studio in Woodstock doing this record, there was this little egg sandwich place that we would go to. And it was like, it used to be like a drive-through smoke and like beer. Little place. I'm forgetting the name, but we get the best egg and cheese sandwich. We were eating a lot of Yum Yum noodle. Shout out to Yum Yum Noodle Bar in Woodstock. Out here, though, I mean, and when I'm working in the studio, oh my God. If we take a break and we're able to, shout out to India Sweets and Spices, because that's like my favorite food, especially like in between, like songwriting, meeting up with songwriters, going there. I don't know if you've been. I highly recommend their dosa. Yeah, these kinds of, I like hole in the wall type places. Oh, what else do John and I love to get? Thai food. He turned me on to mock duck. Mock duck. You should try it. Yeah.
Is that like veggie duck?
It's a vegetarian duck.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
I turned pescatarian after I got married, so I'm learning all the new ways to eat the foods I used to love. And
welcome. Yeah.
Interesting.
It is not, I will say, it is not like, it is its own thing. I believe it's made out of wheat gluten. And it is very satisfying, especially if you get it with sticky rice. I think I'm going to have to I'm talking myself into that now.
I understand why. Well, next time you come through town, we'll have to have a drink and toast to human connection.
Please, I would love that. Nothing more, Graham.
There's a part of me that is tempted to try and sum this up with some soaring oratory about the value of humanity in art and about the spiritual dangers of what we're calling AI, at least when it's put to the use of replacing artists. But I think A, we kind of talked about all that in the conversation, and B, you already know about that. So I don't think that I need to, start preaching here, probably for the best that I don't ever do that. I can't believe how fast, like I said to Sam, I can't believe how quickly it just became rote and assumed that you're going to use this technology, that this technology is definitely like a little helper, little clippy for life, and that we should obviously just be pouring our lives and attention and energy, both our precious individual energy and also the collective output of our modern society, into these big holes. The fact that art is made by humans is what makes it art to me. An exact replica of art that could have been made by a human that fools everybody that wasn't made by a human can't be art. That's Graham Wright's position on the matter. Not that anyone asked, but I knows what I likes, and what I likes is people. Human people with their flaws and their imperfections and their sort of constantly frustrated strivings towards some kind of glory, and how when they inevitably fall short, where they land itself bespeaks and contains these truths that we don't even have, verbal language or written language to express. We can only understand them through the art that we love. And, just because we live at a time when the primary, social utility of art seems to be to generate value for a smaller and smaller group of people, that's a coincidence. And I love talking about art and commerce because the commerce does infect the art inevitably, but there was art before capitalism and there'll be art after capitalism. I just read this amazing article about cave paintings in France and Spain, and it's what we make as humans, it resonates through history, forward and backwards. Anyway, I know where I stand. You probably already know where you stand as well. I don't know why I'm still talking about this, especially on a fucking podcast, which probably uses AI in 19 different places that I don't even know about. So I'm a hypocrite, but what else is new? I've never appreciated charges of hypocrisy because I've never met anyone interesting who's not a hypocrite, although I suppose perhaps a perfect computer someday might transcend that. Anyway, thanks for listening to me rant. More importantly, thanks for listening to the great conversation I got to have with Sam, who is so much more articulate and well-spoken about this stuff than I am. And huge thanks to him for coming on the show. Check out his music too. It's too bad in a way that, we spent so much time talking about AI that it overshadowed what I was just praising, his human art. God bless Sam, both for what he's doing, putting his name to this lawsuit, standing and being counted, and also for joining us on Major Label Debut, which of course, as we all know, is the #1 contribution to human thriving. Thank you for listening to Major Label Debut. It's produced, as always, by John Paul Bullock and Josh Hook. Our theme music is by Greg Alsop. This is a beautiful, bespoke, artisanal, handcrafted podcast. And we're so grateful to you for listening. Major Label Debut will return, as always, with more tales from the intersection of art and commerce. Take care.